Okay, just a second longer, and then we'll probably go through roll call and all of those other
Yep.
things.
Take care of that too.
So I don't, a couple more people hopping in. So it looks like we're holding steady at 16 attendees. So I think that that's everyone.
Sounds good. I think I'm going to go ahead and we don't need to announce who those attendees are. So unless anybody sees a huge need. So welcome everyone to the regular session of the LRAPA board meeting. And before we take roll call, I'd like to issue a special welcome to Brian Cutchin, who is the new mayor of Oak Ridge, previous city manager, I think. Welcome, Brian. You're going to have a blast during our meetings. I'm confident of that. They will keep you on the edge of your seat. And also I'd like to welcome our new Springfield Commissioner, Lane County Commissioner David Lovell. How you doing, Dave? Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for the welcome, Counselor. Appreciate that.
Good to see you. So we got pretty much a full complement here, unless we dropped Terry off. But oh, there he is. I'm sorry, you're off to the different side of my screen. Hi, Terry. All right, go ahead, Steve. Raise your hand, please. Or you got your hand raised? Go ahead.
Yeah, Chair Joe, members of the board, if this is an appropriate time, we do want to introduce one new LRAPA employee that was hired just after the November board meeting, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, let's how about let's go ahead and take our roll call for the meeting purpose so we know who's officially in attendance, and then we'll go ahead and do with the introduction. So I just wanted to make sure we introduced and noted Brian and David. So go ahead with official roll call, Travis.
Okay, I'll do that real quick. So starting with board members with us today, we have Chair Joe Pictionary, Vice Chair Janine Parisi, Terry Fitzpatrick, Howard Saxon, Mike Fleck, Jenna Nee, Brian Cutchin, and David Lovell. From LRAPA staff present today, we have Steve Dietrich, myself, Travis Knutson, Debbie Weininger, Colleen Wagstaff, Jonathan Wright, Julie Lindsay, Katie Eagleson, Lance Giles, Max Hupley, and Robin Robertson, as well as Amanda Atkins. Also present is Mary Bridget Smith, legal counsel for LRAPA. Members of the public who we have joining us is Lynn Taylor and Diana Palmer, who are our minute recorders. We have, who I believe to be Brogan Waywright with us, Grace Kaplitz, Jim Daniels, and I believe that is all present currently.
Thank you, Travis. So moving on with roll call and a check-in. So any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to item number 4. Item number 4 is our board response to public request at October's meeting. So at the October 22nd board meeting, a request was made on behalf of Mr. Waybright to obtain a hearing on whether his initial contested case hearing request was timely. The background of this case is case number 22-3839. Based on the board, I'm going to go ahead and issue a motion if this is appropriate at this time. I think it is. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that I move the board to direct LRAPA staff to arrange a hearings officer and hold a hearing to determine whether Mr. Wadebright's initial contested hearing request was timely.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Mike Fleck. All those in favor signify by hands up so we can see them and we can get a roll call count. So I see hands up, and myself. It looks like it is unanimous. Do you concur, Travis? Okay, anybody opposed, please notify now. All right, the motion carries unanimously. Next item will be the public comment section. The public participation is that the comments will be on any item on today's agenda. So do we have any speakers or people wishing to speak from the public? Please identify those.
And anybody from the public who wishes to speak, if you use the raise hand feature in Zoom, that's so you can identify that you would like to participate in the public participation section, at which point I'll be able to unmute you and you can do that. Chair Joe, so far I've not seen any hands be raised.
Okay, we provided adequate time for those responses. So let's move on to item 5B. Is there any comments not included in today's agenda? Anyone wishing to speak on that? All right. And any comments from board members wishing to speak to the board? Was that Mike? Did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention our council, City of Cottage Grove Council, does not have a formal list of appointments yet, but my understanding from our new mayor is that I will be appointed to this again.
Well, that's kind of crazy. Why would they do that?
I know. Gosh,
That's-
what has it been, 14 years or something?
Yeah, it's been crazy. So no, I appreciate that. I'm glad you're still on. You're still going to be here, Mike. Thank you. You're a great asset and resource of information. Any other comments? I guess along that same comment, I've been reappointed to represent Springfield on this board as well. Okay.
Hey, Joe, I'm just wanted to introduce myself to our newer members. I'm
Oh
Janine.
yeah, I'm sorry. Let's do that.
From citizen representative from City of Eugene. And I've been on this board for a long time, but not as long as Mike. So I'm glad to see some new faces with us. Thanks for joining.
Yep, that's a great idea. I'm sorry, I should have caught that. If other board members could please introduce themselves to the new board members, that'd be great. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I just want to say happy to be aboard and partner with LRAPA. They're obviously a fundamental partner out there in Oak Ridge with our targeted airshed stuff. So thanks, and I'm glad to be aboard.
Welcome. And Jenna, would you like to do an intro of yourself for the folks?
I'm Jenny. I'm representing Eugene.
Excellent. And Terry?
Hi, I'm Terry Fitzpatrick. I represent, citizen representative for Springfield, and fairly new myself, only about a year. So,
Thank you. David?
Hey,
And
good
how are you
afternoon.
next?
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. David Lovell, newbie commissioner, sucking on a fire hose out here in City Hall. Glad to be on the committee. Springfield's where my heart, passion, and all my efforts are. So I'm glad to be a part of the team.
Welcome, David. Howard?
Yes, I'm a city council appointed representative, City of Eugene.
And welcome. And Steve, if you want to introduce our new staff, that'd be great.
Yes, thanks, Chair Joe, members of the board. So a while back, just after our November board meeting had already been accomplished, we hired Amanda Atkins. If Amanda could show herself and introduce and say a few words.
It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm just about 2 months in and enjoying my time at LRAPA.
Welcome, Amanda. Good
So
to
what's
have
your
you on
position?
board.
What kind of work are you doing with the agency? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that part.
I actually am the finance and grants analyst, so I help out in quite a few areas. I come from most recently running an accounting department for a law firm here in town.
Welcome.
Yes, I'm sure you're going to come in handy. All right. Any other comments from the board? Perfect. Moving on to item number 6 in action items. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Well, I'll go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Howard.
Yeah, I move approval of the consent agenda items.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Go ahead, Janine, comment.
I have a request for an edit on the bottom of page or on page 5 of the minutes. That first paragraph, I'm pulling it up right now. It just says Vice Chair Janine Parisi. That paragraph, that very last sentence just said Vice Chair would like to see an option without service. And I think what we were trying to say is without the level of service component would just make it a little bit more clear. So just a clarifying comment, if everyone's okay, I just recommend we adopt with that minor edit.
So Howard, you want to modify your motion just briefly there?
Yes, I move approval of the minutes and the consent agenda items with the amendment to the minutes of the last meeting, November meeting.
And the second agrees.
Excellent. Sounds like we covered that. Janine, you good? Okay. It's been moved and seconded for approval of the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by an aye or hands up. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Next item is going to be item number 7. You're on mute, Steve.
Sorry about that. Chair
Right.
Joe, members of the board, by way of introduction to this, in November of 2022, during the board meeting, we introduced this agenda item so that we could consider partner fees as part of our 2024 budget planning that we're about ready to embark into pretty soon. So to continue this discussion, Finance Director Julie Lindsay has provided a number of alternatives that was part of the board packet that uses CPI and population to derive a number for each partner to provide LRAPA with the funds we need to operate. And so I was going to have Julie highlight some of those, or just ask your questions, or how do you want to proceed?
I think it'd be helpful to have Julie just kind of walk us through where we were, because we have a couple different options from last time. So
Okay. So, Travis, Kristen, so we can,
Oh,
sorry.
yes. Sorry, let me grab, I thought I,
Steve, did you want to introduce Kristen?
yeah, let me add Kristen here. Sorry about that, Kristen. She should be hopping on here as a panelist when she hits accept. My bad, Julie, sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
Here we go. Hi, Kristen.
So Chair Joe, members of the board, Kristen Denmark is an attorney that we've hired. Joe, it looks like you're familiar with this person. And she's going to help us with the discussion on partner fees. And ideally, it's because some of this topics, rather than have Mary Bridget be our attorney of reference on this discussion, to avoid any conflict of interest type of discussion or worry, we have hired Kristen for that purpose.
Okay, Travis, I may need to log out and come back in. Okay, it keeps shutting off. All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, I'll keep watching this. So in the board packet is the staff report. We had come in November with some partner fee ideas. And so we were asked to go back and take another look at the partner fees. So what you have before you are the first 3 alternatives. So just so everybody understands the difference between alternative A1 or 1A and 1B. So prior to there, thank you, Travis. Prior to
You cut out, Julie. Travis, I don't have,
Yeah, I think Julie, you might have to sign back out and then sign back in again, possibly because your audio is cutting out on us. I think the video is not quite so important if that stays on or off, but the audio is. So I'll get Debbie, or not Debbie, Julie, an opportunity to jump back in. Also, I put into the chat a link to the document that I'm sharing now for any of the board who wants to look through it more closely, as well as people who are have joined us publicly here. And I'll wait for Julie to hop back in.
So just for the benefit of timeliness, I know this is kind of we've had one conversation about this as a board, and now this is our second conversation. There's a staff recommendation for either all 1C or 2C, I believe. These are, I think, represent a 6% rate of inflation, and then they back in the 32,000 of in-kind service legal fees that the city of Springfield was using in lieu of paying their full freight. Because as you remember, for the past, I don't know, many years, Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County have been paying a little bit less than their fair share. I think it was half of what it was, and then we raised that by 10%. I think maybe in 2018, 19, Mike, you might remember. But we're still not paying as much as our small city contributors, Oak Ridge and Cottage Grove. So that's just kind of the background. I'm wondering if there's anyone on the board who is ready to make a motion on either of the staff recommendations, just to get us started and see where we're at, just for expediency.
You're calling for a motion, Janine?
A motion and a second, just to have discussion.
And I'm happy when it's appropriate to provide a little bit more context, but I can do that now or after a motion.
Please do, Kristen.
Okay. So I, just recently been retained by LRAPA. The amount of fees that are charged presents a conflict for Mary Bridget Smith, since she represents the city. And so there's really two issues under the IGA. So the LRAPA board has, the first thing is to determine the amount of money required by LRAPA for the purpose of carrying out its objectives each year. So that's decision one. And then decision two is the board shall determine the amount and the language used of the estimate. That's what LRAPA needs, which it feels is fair and equitable to be charged to each party. And so that's the second part. And the requirement is just that it's split fair and equitably. We don't have any further legal guidance on either of those issues. So each issue, issue one has one sentence in the IGA, and issue two has one sentence in the IGA. There are some Oregon revised statutes and Oregon administrative rules that govern LRAPA, but they do not govern this issue of the partner contributions. My understanding is that from about 2008 or 2009, some entities contributed their fair and equitable share, not just in cash, but also the agreement at that time, the unwritten agreement, was to provide a portion in-kind services. And so what I've talked to Steve and Julia about is, once the board decides what amount, issue one, what amount LRAPA needs for the next fiscal year, that I could talk to the partner entities to say, are you contributing this amount in cash or in a combination of cash and in-kind services? And if the in-kind services are going to be part of that, then we would just say, what are they, and quantify them. There's just been a lot of things happening in practice that just haven't been documented. So it's a good opportunity to do that. So that's been the conversation thus far. And I just, wanted to give you that update as you go into your discussion.
Okay, thanks, Krista. Hey, I'm back now. I went into Colleen's office.
She's back.
Okay, so yeah, just a quick on the alternative. So that is the difference between 1A and 1B. The 413 that you see, that is like the gross amount that then some of the jurisdictions had made some in-kind services agreements with LRAPA. So when you get to 1B, that is the amount that is net those in-kind agreements. And so last spring, I was approached by City of Springfield in regards to paying for our in-kind services that we're receiving from Mary Bridget, but start paying hour for hour. So that's what alternative 1C was to recognize the fact that if we move to say this is our new base, LRAPA will receive a increase in expenses of those legal fees. So those are the three alternatives there. When you then move down to 2, A, B, and C, the what was there was last year we had presented where we might look at service a little bit in regards to how to allocate the base. So once we agree on the base, it's how do we allocate it? And I looked in these alternatives between population and service level. And so it does give you an estimate of how much those would be if we did that. And there's 3 of those using the same base as in the first set of alternatives. So I didn't know if you guys, if you wanted more information, if you have,
Mike has a question.
yeah, different thoughts, if questions.
Mike does. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So what determines service? You know, because my fear is we spend a lot of time in Oak Ridge, you know, because of the, you know, PM25 standards and which they've done a wonderful job in. And so my fear would be there would be a disproportionate, you know, charge on them, which I was, you know, objecting to. I'm not seeing that here, so I'm, you know, pleasantly surprised, but also kind of curious as to what is going into what's being considered service.
Right. So the first question regarding Oak Ridge is this general fund monies? And so any work that's happening in Oak Ridge under the grants is not included in this.
Okay.
So that's one of the big reasons.
Okay.
Okay. And Steve, did you want to address the service question?
Yeah, so the service is, you know, one component of it is investigating complaints. And, you know, we've talked about the breakdown of that before between, you know, just out of, as a comparison, from the total complaints we do each year, which is somewhere around 800 or 900 complaints a year. About half of them, for example, are in the Eugene area. And the rest of them are scattered around the other 4 partner areas. And then other levels, other service is what we do for our regulations to either implement, write our permits, or do inspections. That is what we look at as far as service to our partners.
Okay, well, that sounds great. And I'll just finish by saying I'm okay with actually any of the 6 choices. I think they're all fair and equitable. And I think it's more to the partners who have had funding challenges to determine that. So I will just say that I'm going to support whatever you folks want to do.
Is there any other board members that have a question? Okay, I have a few comments and been working pretty extensively with Springfield Fiscal, and Springfield Fiscal has, we have at Springfield looked at the efficacy of the dues, how best to determine as far as opposed to just random, okay, well, we're going to charge this much this year for dues without any apparent mechanism or what's that fancy word called, Julie, where you have a methodology. That's it, Kristen. So without any real recognized methodology, and Springfield has come up with a methodology that may be very equitable or workable, usable, whatever term you want to use for the other partners, and makes those numbers very predictable for LRAPA and as far as anticipated receipts, and also fairly predictable for the cities on what to budget for. Typically, when the dues question comes up, it's after our budget is already fixed, so to speak, and then we have to do a backpedal or whatever refigure. So basically speaking, in short, our fiscal folks have come up with a, and I've got an email that spells it out, and I hate to, Julie, do you have an understanding or a summary of what Nate's talking about? Would maybe put it in English?
Yeah, so in and my conversations with Nate was email back and forth, but basically what I am doing, and traditionally I've seen looks like was been done, is inflation factor was being put on the previous year's amount. So previous year plus an inflation factor. Whereas what Nate is suggesting is previous year plus the tax rate or average tax rate. He had given me a 15-year average tax rate of about 3.3%. So I think that's up to negotiation with the board, but that's what Nate, and I think that has to do with LRAPA does not have a tax base with the general fund, right, of property taxes, and that this would kind of be like that if the cities goes up the 3.3%, then that's the contribution to LRAPA.
Yeah, and that's
Right?
pretty much my understanding. Yeah, it's the valuation is what the cities, you know, that Cottage Grove gets paid, and City of Eugene and Springfield, we all get funds or taxes based on the valuation of the properties within that district or within those boundaries. So those don't generally bounce too much. Sometimes there have been years where it's varied some, but for stability purposes and the ability to pay, it'd be hard to argue if an entity says, well, we don't want to pay the 4% increase, but yet their valuation went up 4.2%, for example. That means their receipts have gone up 4.2%, and their ability to pay should absolutely commensurate with that. So that's I think the angle in which the Springfield's looking at, saying, okay, we have these dues, and there is it's hard to justify paying more in dues than what the valuation of the current receipts are, because that would be what everybody's getting, their own valuation. So I like this methodology. It's predictable. And Springfield, I think we've pretty well have said this is really the methodology we're going to use to pay dues that's moving forward. But go ahead, Janine.
I guess a question and then just a observation. So if we were to move to that methodology of like some rolling average, I don't know if 15 years is the right time period or whatever, of valuation numbers to more closely align with the jurisdiction's ability to pay based on the revenue they're receiving, which totally makes sense to me, Joe. Would each jurisdiction then have to provide that number? Or is that something like Julie would be able to access? I'm like, because it might be 3.3% for Springfield because your valuations are growing more slowly than Eugene. Like, what if Eugene's valuations are, or are those all capped under measure 49 and 51? I'm not sure. I don't know enough about this. So I'm speaking with a lot of ignorance here. Would those numbers be fairly consistent among all partners? Because I just feel like equity is important, and I don't want to.
It's my understanding, Janine, that they are. There is caps. We cannot raise our valuation greater than a certain percent. So we're stuck. It's like if LRAPA wants to sit there and raise, if LRAPA wants to raise their rates by 5%, and the cap is our valuation only goes up, 2.7% or 3.4%, then that, of course, those dues keep stacking on one another each year, and that gets out of line. So if we had that fixed to our valuation to each city is what they're, it's what's coming in is what you can afford to put out, as otherwise you're going to go backwards or forwards, and this keeps it really equitable.
I understand the methodology. I'm just asking, are you recommending, Joe, that then all the cities would do the same thing and those numbers would vary slightly among the jurisdictions? So that's my first question, which I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, and I can't put it on other cities, but I would just certainly highly recommend the other cities take a look at that methodology and say that, by golly, may just make sense to us. And that's what we think we could do. But Kristen's had her hand up. And
can I just ask my second question, or just make this observation, and then I'll put my hand down and stop talking.
Yeah, no worries.
My observation is that the 3.1 or whatever the number was, Joe, I can't remember what you said, 3.3 is about half what the CPI is. So I guess my other question to staff would be, does that generate enough revenue to meet our needs and our maintenance of effort? So those are my two questions, and I'll stop talking.
So I agree that you need some methodology and, you know, I also would think Julie or some staff could run some numbers on that. I asked them, do you think you're going to have a decision on this today? And we need one soon, but not necessarily today, I think. But what I want to caution is we have to be careful about if there is a methodology, what we're applying that to. You know, under the IGA, the first step is to determine what LRAPA needs. And that should be the all-in number of cash and in-kind services, okay? And so I want to make sure that the in-kind services aren't backed out of that all-in number. So you start off by what LRAPA needs, and then you're going to apply this methodology to that. And so we have to make sure that we're applying it to whatever the all-in number is. And then using the methodology to allocate out to the jurisdictions, then there's going to be a number. Let's say that the city of Springfield's is $40,000. Then the city of Springfield can come up with that amount of cash or a combination of cash and in-kind services. But we have to make sure that we don't back the in-kind services off the top. And so I just want to make sure that that's clear. We're looking at it all in during these conversations.
Thank you, Chris. And Mike, I know you got your hand up. I just want to comment to that just quickly. The way I see it too, and the way folks in Springfield see it, is that, for example, you're talking about, okay, what does LRAPA need? And so we have LRAPA folks looking at, okay, well, this is what we need. Springfield does it all the time. We also find we're short every year. And when we're short, we have to make adjustments in regards to even laying off folks or not doing as much. But we can't go and say, okay, hey, citizens, we really need this because we don't want to shrink, or we want to be able to hire 5 more people. So we really need this much money. And so therefore we're going to assess that against you. It doesn't work that way in regards to what cities receive in funding. So the need, what is the perceived need? Is that coming from staff, or what do they have to live with? So Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so Joe, I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, this is the revenue in your general fund is capped at that, and I get it. The problem is for each city to do it is not apples to apples comparison. You know, let's say you build a Hyundai in your city tomorrow, you know, the value of your tax base has gone up dramatically, you know, where you're still capped at that 3% per household. So, and then add compression into that discussion, add, you know, other jurisdictions coming in, that's just muddy water. So I guess I'm with Janine. What is our maintenance of effort requirements, you know, and can we establish that with around 3%, which I think is fair. You know, if the cities are stuck with that, then LRAPA may have to tighten its belt, you know, to live within that. I'm not opposed to the 3% range as a maximum. The problem I have is it needs to be a flat rate across the county, not based on each jurisdiction, because, you know, all of us are doing very different things. Eugene has compression across the board, so that's not going to be an apples to apples with, you know, Cottage Grove, which has very little compression. So, I mean, like I said, that's really a slippery slope. So I guess the question for me on staff right now is Janine's question: will that achieve our maintenance of effort and, you know, keep the agency going?
So is that a question to Julie?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I can respond somewhat to it. So I have started playing with the budget numbers, and I've actually got a spreadsheet that has played with this tax idea, and it makes a difference in that base amount. However, it's very close. You know, if somebody was to say, if LRAPA increased by 3.3%, what does the next year's budget look like? For next year, Steve and I spoke today, and I think it's relatively okay because our revenues are relatively stable. It doesn't appear that for next year we have any threats against our revenues or dropping more industries or anything like that. So, but what I can't tell you is what happens in the out years, you know, based on the number of sources, the number of permits, that type of stuff. So if in the agreement, there's a cap, that may or may not be overly harmful to the agency.
Does that fill in the blanks a little bit, Mike? Okay. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, first, I agree with Mike's comments on the valuations and the averages, but my comment would be, you know, the growth rate and assessed values and the growth rate for LRAPA to operate probably aren't parallel. So somewhere, and I think Kristen kind of alluded to it, there needs to be a rigorous validation of the LRAPA requirements in you know, inculcated in the methodology. So that's my only thought.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. Any other comments from any other board members? I personally would like to see how this would pencil out using this methodology. And I know that I do agree, Mike, there's definitely the differences in the city, in each city. I get that. But I think we ought to have the opportunity for the other partners to take a look to see if this approach is more appealing to them as opposed to something else. Go ahead, Janine, or even workable for that matter. Go ahead, Janine.
So, you know, one thing we could do is we could try to, you know, recommend a number for this year that isn't really tied to a specific methodology, given the time frame, and set this aside for a work session for a little bit more discussion that would give, like Kristen, some chance to maybe reach out to the other partners, ask about the valuation. You know, another methodology, I think no matter what we want to do, I think we would all agree that having something that's very well articulated and documented makes sense versus kind of like these handshake agreements that we can't keep track of. So I think we're all in agreement there. The question is, do we have enough time to figure out what that is and give our jurisdictional partners enough time to budget? Because, you know, their fiscal years are coming up soon and a lot of them are starting their budget committee meetings. So I'm just a little anxious about timing, and I don't want to be forced into making this methodology decision without enough discussion. I know we're already like running late on our agenda. So all that said, an alternate methodology could be a rolling CPI average, you know, like a 5 or 10 year rolling CPI. Again, we're all trying to figure out a way to stabilize so we're not being, so there's more predictability and there's less volatility in cash flow for both the agency and for our partners. I think those are good principles for a methodology. I just don't know how quickly we can get there and what's fair in terms of asking for from our partners and giving them enough time to respond. So I'm not landed on any one decision. I'm just worried about the time frame.
Yeah, and that's definitely a factor. I'm sure I see Mike waving on his head and stuff. He's all got our budget and stuff, but I'm just gonna share that Springfield's budgeted $30,143 for their dues for 2024, because we have to get it in our budget, and that's what we budgeted, and we use that methodology to at least show how we derived that number, how we got there. So I think that will still be, you know, it's a fair number, but I know that it'll still allow LRAPA to continue swimming. So I'm not sure, you know, I think we can have, I don't know where to go from here. Kristen, actually, more than anything. So
Yeah,
I've already stated what Springfield's going to pay, and it's a matter of what other folks are going to pay or what methodology is going to pay. But I think coming up at this time of year to come up with a due schedule is pretty rough timing wise. Janine has hit that on the nail.
Yeah, and I would agree with what Janine said, and that's what I've been talking to Julie and Steve about, is that, you know, ideally this board either at this meeting or next month kind of comes up with a Band-Aid solution, that everybody knows you need to do something. And then have a work session. Give me some time to talk to the, other attorneys so that I can hear from those entities. And then report back on that and have a work session to, make a plan, a methodology that considers all the factors you have mentioned. Because I don't think, given the number of entities that are involved, those conversations about the methodology can fully happen in the time that it needs to. So I do think you're looking at just trying to figure out something that's as good as it can be for this next coming year. And everybody knows that. And then we do, the work, and come back to you with reports on that work so you can have a really good discussion.
Thank you, Kristen. And just so I'm clear too with the board, is that we increased ours 3.3%, equal to the same as our assessed valuation within the city.
So
Assessed
Joe-
valuation increase, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Just so one question is if what the board adopted is actually, one of these options, not very far off what you said is in the Springfield budget, could the city of Springfield could do a supplemental budget to reallocate like $1,000 if,
Yeah, no, I know there's always that
Okay,
goes
I
ways.
just
but
wanted to ask, yeah.
I
Okay.
just want to make sure I put that
Yeah.
on the board and where we stand at, and I can always go back,
Right. Okay.
I'm sure somebody will listen to me. I'm running out of those people, but go ahead. All right, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and I'll be brief. I guess, Joe, I'm a little frustrated. I mean, I get money's tight, but what is Springfield's budget? I mean, ours is what, $46 million. Yours is probably 10 times that. I guess I'm a little frustrated because my goal in all of this was to get it equitable across all of the jurisdictions. And now I'm hearing Springfield's actually not going to support that. And I'm frustrated, and I'm sorry to just say it outright. I don't think a few $1,000s is going to kill a city one way or the other. And I want something that's equitable across the board. And I guess that's where I'm at. I'm okay with all sorts of versions of how we get there, but I want it to be equitable, not having our partners anymore saying, well, this is all I'm going to pay. If that's okay, I really would like it to be an equitable process. Thank you.
And I'm fine. I wish ours was 10 times that. It's not, but no. And this is, I think this is actually a good jump off point. And I understand exactly what you're saying. And it's still a matter of what is really equitable and what, what's the outcome? What are we getting for the money? There's going to be at some point that, if we triple everybody's dues and dump a bunch of cash into LRAPA, is that really going to be, is the cities getting what they're paying for over and above what DEQ would provide? It goes back to that conversation is, okay, where's the equitable place for LRAPA? And I want to keep LRAPA impossible to get rid of from the city's points of view. And this is really, the dues is, I guess, really more of a symbol of being a partner, like you said, than a huge cash deal. But I don't know about you, but I look at every single $1,000 in our budget, no matter how many zeros we got. I look at them and I take it all real seriously.
Process-wise, if the board were to make a motion and say, hey, I support Alt 1C as a bridge strategy for this year, we send those dues requests out to the cities. The cities would still have the opportunity to offer some in-kind services or some other way to get that. Or they could just say, hey, we can't do this. Here's what we can do. We come back and then, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, what is that bad form? I mean, isn't that what we've done in the past? Like, it just feels unusual for us to hear, well, this is what we're willing to pay, and then we make the request based on what they're willing to. It just feels backwards. We've never done it this way before. So I can see us saying, like, okay, we don't really have a fully baked methodology. We want to get there. Here's a placeholder. can you do this? And then there's, then I guess, what I think has happened in the past is there's some negotiation between staff and their partners on here's what we can do, and then you let us know, and then maybe we have to adjust so we get back to that equitable place. So if we ask the city of Springfield for 39,000 in all 1C and they say, hey, I can only do 32, then I guess, in my mind, we'd have to adjust for everybody and figure out how to eat those funds. Because I agree with you, Mike. I don't want to exacerbate what's already been a little bit inequitable between the partners. And I think we should avoid that as much as possible. I'd like us to get more on even footing if that's possible. But I also don't know that we could get to a base of $413,000 cash out of our partners, because every single partner agency, City of Springfield, I can't imagine the county's in a different place, but I don't want to speak for them. I imagine that their budgets are as tight as everybody's. So I want to find a practical solution and at least start the discussions with the partner agencies so they can respond. It sounds like we know what Springfield's probably going to say, but we don't know what the other entities are going to say. And I want to get those conversations moving if it's going to be a little longer and harder than it has been in the past.
And Janine, you're making good points, and I don't disregard them at all. You're making great points. I think the what it boils down to with partners as well is something that we can look forward to and project out 3, 4, 5 years or whatever with predictable methodology, instead of, well, I wonder what LRAPA is going to ask for this year. That type of thing. And I know we're trying to get there now because of these different methods. So I think all of this is good. Where we land, I think we're not there yet. So we're just not there yet. And I'm just trying to, I think that it deserves more discussion, but go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, I just did want to clarify between 1B and 1C. So unfortunately, last spring, City of Springfield did approach us, and they basically would like to bill us hour for hour for Mary Bridget's time. So Mary Bridget, now longstanding, when we went to these in-kind services, it started with City of Eugene with Glenn Klein. And as Glenn then retired out, from what I understand, it then switched to Mary Bridget, who then became an employee of City of Springfield. And we have been using Mary Bridget without being billed an hourly rate. So the City of Springfield is actually preparing a contract for LRAPA, wanting to bill us hour for hour. So that's why the 1C showed up, because City of Springfield is expecting to get some sort of revenue from LRAPA for the use of Mary Bridget's time, when in the past we have not been billed for that. And so any increase to the City of Springfield would be offset by that revenue that is paid back to them, if in fact we continue that relationship.
And that's the thing, if in fact. So it leaves LRAPA open to choose who they want to have represent the agency. So that should not be factored at all into what Springfield dues are, because none of the other agencies have been doing any in-kind for anything. So
yeah, for a while we can't find any evidence. I know Lane County provided HR services, and
right,
again, City of Eugene provided the legal.
Right, but that's old history and it's gone. And so these current dues and whatnot, we're considering that, but now we look at the increases, and those other agencies have not provided anything in kind. Springfield has, and Springfield says, "Oh, stop. Okay, we're going to go ahead and bill for that service. We'll pay dues just like all the other partner agencies." So I don't believe we are asking anything over and above what the partner agencies have been privy to or have received. So the whole thing with the legal services, in my mind, would be improper to think about what that combination is and using that part of the negotiation in regards to dues, because LRAPA, because of that separation, has the ability to get their legal services anywhere without having to worry about now some sort of MOU and some sort of in-kind thing. Does that make sense? That's the reasoning behind it.
Correct. However, it does increase the annual expenses, which will then turn around and increase the MOE. That's the only reason
Right.
1C was put together, was to recognize the fact, like during budget process, if somebody, when we look at what is increasing above an inflation rate, that's going to be one of them.
And so then I don't understand how that reduces Lane County's bill by 27 or by $23,000 or $13,000. I'm sorry. So there's Lane County actually went down in option 1C.
Travis would have to put that back up.
And David, I know that you have a meeting, and we appreciate your ability to jump on for today, and we'll catch you later. Thank you.
So for Lane County, they're actually increased by 12,000.
Oh, my document says 57,777.
Yeah, unfortunately, on Monday morning, we uploaded and updated of that chart. I apologize, Joe.
That'd be great to have that information. So I'll take back what I said because I had bad information.
Yeah, sorry about that. We sent out an update to that chart. So that is the difference between 1B and 1C, is to recognize the fact that it looks like our expenses would increase based on what is in our current budget.
Go ahead, Janine. Your mic. There you go.
Mike, if you have a suggestion for moving us forward, I'll defer.
Yeah, I think to get us moving forward, if you don't mind, Joe, if I jump in here, why don't we do a Alt 1B at 3% or 3.3% instead of 6, whatever it is. And I think that'll get us moving forward for this year, as long as that'll meet our MOE. I think we can negotiate all of the rest of it in the coming year. I really appreciate, and I don't know if I said this before, the time and energy staff and Kristen put into this, because what we are being presented is an apples to apples across the board, fair representation, which is what I've been asking for. So, but I think, Joe, that'll hit your mark. I mean, it might put you guys in at, I don't know, 31.5 or 32. I don't have the calculator out, but I think that would get us in the ballpark of getting something approved.
Yeah, let me take care of my end. If we're that close, whatnot, let me just go with those. Let's see, Julie, go with what Mike says that makes sense, so we can move forward in my mind. And then I will go back on my side of things to Nate and explain to them and explain to the city that this is where LRAPA is coming from. Obviously, I cannot promise for the city because there's other people in the decision tree, but I could support that, Mike.
Can I ask a question? So Mike, just to clarify, you're saying take this 206,000 number, raise it by 3.3% and eat the $32,000 in legal fees.
Actually, I was saying reduce it, because I think that's actually
Right.
what Joe's City is asking for. But
Right.
but that would reduce it across the board for everybody.
Right.
And that way we would have an equitable solution. I don't think it's ideal, but I think that we're kind of spinning our wheels, and I'm just trying to move us forward.
So what would base number be? I'm sorry, I'm not following when you say reduce. I mean, are you saying the 206 assumes a 6% CPI, so that number would come down by 3? I got you. Okay, and then would the board consider that solution so you start with a slightly lower base, because instead of 6%, it would be 3.3%. Would the board also consider allocating that $32,000 across the partners? It's still going to be a smaller number.
So I guess I totally agree with Joe as far as the attorney fees. That is not Springfield's obligation. That's an LRAPA, expense, not, anything to do with Springfield. Now, I would encourage LRAPA to contract with Springfield, because my guess is they'll give us a much more favorable rate, than a private sector attorney's firm would, so I certainly think that it's a good value for us to contract with Springfield is my guess. I would want to look at the numbers, but that should be nothing to do with this negotiation at all.
But it's part of the cost of doing business that has not been factored into the budget. So you're just saying we have to eat those expenses somewhere else, I guess.
Well, and we paid them for years before Springfield offered and Eugene offered those. So, I mean, if you went back, 6, 8, 10 years, we were paying our own legal fees. So that is an obligation of LRAPA.
So I could support that, Mike, for sure. And I will definitely go back and support that through my decision tree back home, so to speak. I don't think it'll be a big issue. And it seems like across the board like that is very equitable. It's not like giving anybody any favoritism whatsoever or any extra negative impact that's not shared across the boards.
Yeah, and just for quick numbers, so I multiplied the 195,111 by 3.3%. It gives us $201,550 roughly dollars. So it would go down, about 5,000, a little over $5,000 overall for our contribution from 1B.
As a LRAPA board member, I'm okay with that. So do we need a motion for this? I think we do, right, Mike? So if you can, you're so articulate, I would prevail upon you to put one together.
So I will move that the board adopt a modified Alt 1B version of applying the rates to our member jurisdiction instead of and I'm sorry, I didn't see, it was 6 or was it 6% even?
Right, it was.
Instead of the 6% cost of living increase, using a 3.3% increase and applying that based on population. So effectively taking each of the numbers in this column down a little less than 3%.
And I think it's a little discussion on top of that, Mike, just so I'm clear. I think that definitely makes sense. It's the same number that we're using, but coming from a different source, meaning from the coming from the inflation rate, or what you're saying, the other rate, I forgot already, coming from a different information source as opposed to AV. But I think this will get us through. Of course, obviously the number is going to be very close, but at least it gives us some time to hammer out the true methodology, but it still leaves things hanging. Go ahead, Janine.
I would just offer an amendment to that motion and to hold a future work session on long-term methodology.
I totally support that.
Thank you.
Howard, what do you have? Oh, okay, it's been moved in second, but Howard had his hand up, and so the room for discussion. Do we still have room for discussion? Or do I have to call a vote now?
You can have discussion before the vote.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. Just wanted to make sure. Howard, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess, it is what it is. It's a little frustrating that we've come to this point, but I guess I'm curious if the motion's adopted. I guess I'd like to hear from Steve as to what impact this will have on services. How much of will there be any reduction in the level of service that LRAPA currently provides member cities, entities?
So Chair Joe, members of the board, I'm glad you asked that, Howard. I think I understand what just got described, and that 206,818 sounds like it's going to go down a little bit. I know that Julie and I have looked really closely to make sure whatever options we put up here, at a minimum, we're going to cover maintenance of effort as it stands right now. Of course, no one can be a crystal ball in the future, too far in the future, to guess what it needs to be in the future. But the level of service on most of the things that LRAPA provides would go unchanged. There are some exceptions to that when it comes to different different amount of effort we spend either with our items that are not covered by funds other than general funds. The general funds is what's affected most, and Julie can confirm that or elaborate on that just a little bit if it makes sense to do so at this time.
I'm okay with that, but does anybody need that chart anymore? Okay, thank you, Travis. Makes it easier to run the meeting. Julie, do you have a comment? Or I think Steve, you had the open it up for comment for Julie. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so we did meet after I reviewed some history with some items that Nate had. And so that is still, again, preliminary with the budget, depending on what the budget committee does. I have calculated those and what those amounts would be, and it is the 201, and that is probably reasonable increase for LRAPA as we start to look at all our revenues and our grant revenues and things like that for next year.
Okay, I'm satisfied with that. So Mike, we have a motion and it's been seconded. Any questions in regards to the motion?
Joe, I didn't hear a second. Who actually seconded it?
Janine did.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So I'm gonna go ahead and call for a vote that we have a motion on the floor, so to speak. So all those in favor signify by a raised hand or an aye. Any opposed signify the same. Okay, from what I can see, Travis, looks like the motion's carried unanimously. And if I could get some documentation or information or summary of some sort that I can bring back to Springfield and whoever else wants it for the partner agencies. I assume, actually, let's do that for all the partner agencies. All of our board members send a summary of this motion. So if there's any further discussion, they have that right in front of them.
Chair Joe, would you like to just see a new table?
Yeah, I think that would be fine, but make sure all the board members get that. And so that way they can go to their folks. And if anyone has questions or concerns, then they can certainly be able to bring them back when we go to work session. Does that sound good to the board members? Okay. Kristen, is that okay to do that? We're good there, right? It's already been motioned to move.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Will that work for you, Julie? Be able to put that together, Steve? Okay, great.
Yes.
And we have definitely moved on, and you know, that's a major personal irk for me to not stay on schedule, but this is just too darn important to worry about an agenda schedule. But usually I'm pretty bad about that, trying to make sure it gets done on time. So let's move on to the next item. If I can find it amongst my notes here. So that was item number 7. Let's move quickly on to item number 8.
Chair Joe, members of the board, it's the this time of year to have preview appointments to boards, committees, and the election of 2023 officers. So I'm going to have our board secretary, Debbie Weiniger, who actually prepared this, to say a few words about the vacancies.
Hi there, everybody. So we go through this same time every year, going into our budget season. A lot of it affects it. A couple things to just note: we do have 2 CAC members coming up that they need to renew if they want to. So Jim Daniels will be working that out. And if we can go down a little bit further there, and I just want to get this out of the way so we can get to the other stuff. We have 2 board members, which are Howard and Janine, and their terms are coming up in June and July. So if they want to continue on, they do need to reapply with the city of Eugene. So we need to get that taken care of. Mike already addressed the city of Cottage Grove. We do know who Joe Bernie's replacement is. So that's kind of old news. But if we go back up to what's really important is the budget committee. So we only have 4 people confirmed at this point. Janine, you were going to get back to me on Adam Rue. I think he's pretty much a go. But the other people, Jenny, David Leval, who's new, Mike Fleck, and Howard Saxon, we need an appointee for a budget committee person, and that has to be presented next month at the February meeting. And at that same time, we will be re-electing a new chair and vice chair. So that's pretty much a summary of what this all covers.
Thank you. So if we can, I guess, it just affects a couple of us in regards to our homework. So if you could send something to Commissioner Lovell to make sure that he has that information so he can start looking for a appropriate replacement or appointment. Because
Sure.
Michelle Weber became a counselor here in our city.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And Mike, I'm sure you're aware, and Howard, you're aware that you have some homework, and Jenna.
Is there any prohibition that we know of a citizen advisory committee member serving on the budget committee?
No, they've served before. Maury Jenner used to be on it all the time. Remember, for years, he did both.
I'm just throwing that out there. If there's vacancies and folks are thinking about possibilities, these are folks who are already kind of familiar with LRAPA and interested, so there might be some good cross-pollination to fill some of those vacancies.
Yeah, I'll throw that out there. We had to do that last year and approach the CAC because we needed members. There were no takers at that time, but we'll try again.
And if I can, thanks, Janine. If I'm going to throw this extra out here, probably more info than you needed or wanted. Springfield has kind of it's members of the committees are discouraged from being on other committees so that their breadth of recommendations or decisions are not mixed with that. So that's, I know this is a small assignment. I get it, but I would love to be able to concentrate on getting new folks before we ask current members to cross over and cross-pollinate. Mike.
So I wanted to ask a quick question. Hey, Joe, no reference to your abilities. You've done a great job the last 3 years, but I think it's only fair for us to pass it to the different jurisdictions to lead our agency. And as I'm looking at our history, it looks like Oak Ridge was next in line with Kathy Holston, but with her not being here, I wanted to ask Brian, being brand new, if he felt comfortable running meetings and doing some of the extra stuff if I were to nominate him next month.
Yeah, like you say, Joe, Mike, I'm the new guy, so I'll be struggling a little bit, but I'm sure I'll get on my feet, and I have no problem if you want to nominate me.
Okay, and like I said, this is more about making sure that each jurisdiction gets a chance to help run, guide the agency. I think Eugene's probably in line. If you weren't interested, I would, recommend one of their, folks for the chair and or vice chair. So let's think about that for next month.
Yeah, I have no problem. I don't take it any bad way at all, Mike. It's actually been a super privilege, but we've gone through so many huge things literally in the last couple, 2 or 3 years that I recognize that it's important to try to have some transition strength there, and I appreciate it, and I hope I did a good job there. So yeah, I think that's a good recommendation for Brian. We can beat up on him a little bit anytime. That'd be great. Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mike. You haven't served in a capacity, and I will not be taking nominations for vice chair or chair as my term is coming to an end. So maybe there's somebody who wants to step into that role. So
And actually, I shouldn't have. I knew that of Janine. That was her thing, and I didn't purposely skip over you not without knowing that. So didn't want to be disrespectful of Janine. So, okay. Anything else on this topic? Do you need anything else, Debbie?
No, I'll just follow up with the remaining people, but otherwise I think
Okay.
we're all set.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. Good work. Let's get a quick status report on the air project. Item number 9, Oak Ridge Air Project.
Yeah, board chair, members of the board, I think it's Grace Kaplowitz that's going to do a very, very short presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, Chair and Board. Thank you for your time. I'll go briefly and highlight some of the updates that are included in the packet to try and save time, since I know it's a precious commodity here. But my name is Grace Kaplowitz. I'm here on behalf of Good Company, and I've been part of the Oak Ridge Air Program Management team for the past couple of years, and previously got to work with Mayor Cutchin at the City of Oak Ridge when he was the administrator there as well. So a couple quick things that I want to bring to your attention. Top of the list is that Good Company is happy to share that we are joining with Parametrics, a Northwest-based planning, environmental science, and engineering firm. So our commitment to you and our grants and projects is remaining the same, and the same staff will stay on the project, but we are in the midst of that transition, and we're excited to be joining with them. They're 100% employee owned, and there's a lot of great work that we'll be able to do in partnership. A couple other things. I think we've presented previously about applying for additional TAG grants. And as you all know, we have 2 grants that LRAPA has successfully been awarded. We were hoping to apply for a 3rd grant, but due to achieving the maintenance status, we're no longer eligible to apply for that. So I think that was acknowledged at the previous meeting, but wanted to highlight that again here. As a continuation from the last update, in total, the Oak Ridge Air and South Willamette Solutions team distributed over 1,000 air purifiers during the Cedar Creek wildfire response. And as you see in the numbers for the home heating upgrades, we had a really great positive response through that. And so through distributing those air purifiers, we've also had, I believe it's 84 more people sign up for the qualifications questionnaire since October, as well as completing more of the projects and getting outreach to a much broader swath of the community. So we're very much looking forward to working with more folks and having better access to people that we haven't been able to communicate with historically. And we're still getting our new upgrade coordinator, Thaddeus, completely up to speed and streamlining his system, but we've been working through the upgrades and have completed 5 more homes since the last report. And there are quite a few more homes that are very close. We're working on wrapping up some little outstanding pieces from some of the early homes that had hard things happen, like roof leaks and projects that were outside of the scope of what the TAG grant can fund. So more to come there. This last couple of months as well, the Oak Ridge High School worked on completing 8 woodsheds that were delivered to residents, and we're going to continue ongoing with additional woodsheds throughout the school year, and we're looking forward to that project. And then I think I wanted to also highlight our U of O research project is continuing. And in the last couple of months, we've installed an additional 11 purple air monitors in the community to monitor indoor air quality. And we have another 24 monitors that will be going up soon. So we'll have another, 30 plus monitors, and the U of O will be looking at the difference in indoor and outdoor air quality, and then the difference in indoor air quality before and after home heating upgrades are completed. So those are some of the points that I wanted to highlight here. I know there's more information, but we're short on time, so I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from her? That was really amazing, Grace. You hammered it. You absolutely hammered it.
Thank you.
Thank you for showing that. That was very nice. Any questions from the board at all for Grace?
It's fantastic work. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to see some of the fuels reduction work happening. That's really, I think, long-term mitigation. It's exactly where we need to be focusing some effort. And I just always love it when I see that the home heating upgrades are happening. So this is such a national model project. I just wish we could, what we hear at the board, I wish the whole state could hear. But that's my personal fantasy. Travis, hope you can make that happen. I want the governor to be speaking to this at the State of the Union address, right? This is it's such great.
Probably a little late. Probably a little late on that, but maybe next year. All right. Awesome. Okay, so that being said, all done there. Let's go ahead and take on topic number 10, news from the advisory committee.
Yep, I just promoted Jim Daniels here to that, so he can do that. Hi, Jim.
Waiting to kill his mic, or should say turn his mic on. Oh, there he is.
Finally.
Hi, Jim.
Hey. Okay, so we have been working on getting that survey out to permitted sources. So a reminder has been sent. We have an ad hoc committee that'll collate those returns, and I hope to have something to report to you for the next meeting. Other than that, in the packet is the annual report that I put together and the committee reviewed. So that's there. If you have any questions, it's activities for 2022 and things we anticipate for this year.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Daniels?
When do we
And
think the surveys will be? Or when are they due, or like kind of what's the next steps there? Did I miss that?
I believe they're trickling in. I'm not working directly on that. Our vice chair is heading the ad hoc committee.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your work. And going on to the next topic will be the topic number 11, Director's Report. Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, Chair Joe, members of the board, I am not going to go through the director's report. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it. It does cover a 2-month period, both December being the last month, but also and November as well from an enforcement standpoint. So if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand, but I was just going to add one thing as an update. Last week, EPA actually announced they are going to lower the PM 2.5 standard for the annual standard that's currently at 12 micrograms per cubic meter. And they're taking, as soon as they advertise it, they're taking comments, and they'll probably land somewhere between 9 and 10 micrograms per cubic meter. The reason that's important is this is the pollutant that has been making it hard for Oak Ridge to be in attainment for PM. So we're going to take a close look at that, pay attention to what that does, as well as how our monitoring shows how well we are doing. So I'll pause there, and that's all I was going to say.
Okay, Stephen. Janine, you have a question? Go ahead.
Did that rule change go through, or is EPA, I thought they had to do like some kind of economic cost benefit analysis. So is that rule promulgated at this point, or is that their recommendation and it has to be vetted further?
So CASAC has already made the recommendation, which is the Clean Air Scientific Committee to EPA. It's out of OMB and about to be placed in the Federal Register for 60-day public comments. So there's still time to comment and make adjustments. That's why they suggested a range between 9 and 10. They haven't set the number yet, but that's what they're leaning towards. So in all likelihood, they're planning to have it final to be new requirement for our NAAQS, National Ambient Air Quality Standard, by the end of this calendar year, if they can do it.
Does that satisfy you, Janine? Okay, good. Any other questions for Steve from our board members? Okay, good. Oh, shoot, I should have done this during comments from the board. I'll do that at the end. I wanted to comment about Steve and his presentation. All right.
So, I'm sorry, one quick question.
Yes.
So looking at an article in the Guard, it says EPA wants to toughen rules for soot pollution. Is that what they're talking about? Is the PM 2.5?
Yes, a lot of times soot is synonymous with particulate matter. Yes.
Okay. And I was going to ask about that, so thank you.
One more, I'm sorry, and I know we're
That's
running
okay.
short, but there was that enforcement action that was the plant that kept dropping ash on the neighbor's house, and we kept asking questions about it and what was going to happen. And I don't see it on there. Did we finally come to some resolution on that one?
Chair Joe, members of the board, yes, Janine, they are finally running their control equipment to where they're supposed to with adequate maintenance.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Is there anything else to add to that report? Steve, anything? Okay. So let's slip into our work session, item number 12. So I'll let you take that, Steve.
Board chair, members of the board, this is the first attempt to try to have a work session in commingled with a regular board meeting. So bear with us on this, but the topic is board bylaws development versus LRAPA responsibilities. In your board packet, you should have already received our existing board handbook. You should have also received as a second attachment an example set of bylaws from the Citizen Advisory Committee. And then our board chair, Debbie, supplied also a very generic draft set of bylaws as a starting point for the board to consider. When you look at how the responsibilities of the board versus LRAPA sit, basically the bylaws are supposed to be something that the board comes up with if they want to entertain doing that. Our handbook also probably is in need of some kinds of update. It's been around for quite some time. And quite honestly, in the time that I've been in this position and just listening to others, it's very rare that a board of this size doesn't have bylaws. So I'll pause there because I'm sure some people that have been doing this a lot longer than I have, say like board member Brian there and some others may have more history with what they would recommend.
I think this is a great start, Steve. I really do. It's something that we've needed for a while. So I think just from my comment, we should potentially give folks a little bit of time to digest this, and perhaps, and I hate this, but have a couple people, 2 or 3 people have a subcommittee to go over this and wordsmith it, and then present it back to the board, and perhaps in that subcommittee, like I said, I'm just recommending a subcommittee. I know it's not a board decision yet, but along with that, their marching orders would be to go through these, make their addendums, wordsmith it, working with staff as well, so we don't go sideways with any particular rules that contrary to what the work rules are, and then present it back with the changes, what they call it, changes track on that document, so the board members can see what was changed, what is proposed to be put in there, and then move on from there on a second work session or third, whatever it is. Looking for some input on that suggestion. And the first 3 people that put their hands up are on the committee. Does that sound like something we could do? Make sense? Anybody?
Makes sense to me to have the small group and then forward it on to the larger group with see what their proposed changes are, and probably eventually a sniff test by an attorney. So.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe, and I'll just jump in. I would normally volunteer. I'm just really overloaded at the moment. I can't take anything else on my plate, but I think that's a great idea, having a subcommittee.
Okay, Janine, I see you're nodding. Jenna or Howard, do you have any input on that in regards to, did you get a chance to take a look at what was sent out?
It's a good idea. I support forming a small committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and Travis did send out that they'd have to be publicly advertised, as far as a public meeting. That's fine. No big deal. That was pretty much what I was already, that's MO nowadays. So any volunteers to be on this committee? I wish I wish I had the full board here right now.
I would actually offer real quick, we have subcommittees without them they're open to the public, but we don't notice them. We don't have a quorum, so.
Well, actually, I think Travis, the public notice thing has to do also with elected officials.
I will, presuming that a subcommittee is formed, I will do the due diligence to make sure we know what all the required noticings are. But I do know that whenever there's more than 2 board members meeting, there are some public laws that you have to be kind of following. So we would look those up, understand them fully and completely, and then follow as needed.
Yeah, we'll just roll with that. So is there interest from any folks that are already here to help spearhead that?
This is Howard. I'll volunteer.
Awesome.
I can assist, Joe.
Great. Janine's really excited about it. I think she should probably maybe before, like, she's really good at wordsmithing, not to pump that up or anything or force you into a corner or anything, Janine, but anyway, so she's not good. She's not falling for it. Okay, so we got 2 people. Let's that would be great. And then I think we can ask Terry and David, although David probably is way overwhelmed right now to be able to take that on, but maybe we can ask Terry to do that, help with that. And I can contact him, I suppose, but so far, let's just do it as so far we got this group started and we haven't nailed it down yet, Steve, as far as who's on this group, but I think that's the direction we should go and see if we can't garner another board member to do that. I know I'm smoking busy. It's on so many different boards, i.e. this one, but good. So that's not any decision that the board needs to make. It's just something we need to do. I don't see that needing a motion.
Chair Joe, if you can get that figured out and we know who is the spokesman for the group as far as that goes. So if we need to help out with any kind of advertising or setting up meeting places, whatever that needs, just let us know how we can help with the mechanics of it rather.
Well, I believe we'll need a staff liaison with that, or at least a staff person present. So at least we can have a scribe, scribe duties and or some additional information or resources would be readily available if we had a staff member appointed to that committee as well. Janine?
I was wondering if it would be helpful for this group if you have other committees or that have bylaws, just to see kind of what topics are covered, so we can easily identify some gaps to see if there, because I think we have a pretty good foundation. Taking a look at what's there, that's like kind of big pieces, but there might be a couple of other sections in there that we would want to include. So I was just going to suggest if any of us know of committees, us who are working in public agencies that have bylaws that we can send as examples to the subcommittee, that might be helpful for them.
It's a great idea. And I think we can reach out easily, ask Mary Bridget to see what committee bylaws are out there. And also our, gosh darn, I already forgot her name, the other attorney we had here just a little bit ago that is the MWMC attorney as well. Ask both of those folks and see if they have, I'm sure they do. That's a great idea, Janine. No point in reinventing the wheel. Awesome. So if we can, Steve, if you can find somebody or assign somebody to follow up with those calls, get that information. I assume Travis probably will. Excuse me. And we can move from there. So if we can be informed on that, kept informed, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, next item. So that would be, anything else in the work session that you wanted to talk about, Steve?
No, I just knew we weren't going to solve it today, but there are a number of other topics we can get into, but this is an important one. And, from a new board members coming on board, it's good to have these kinds of items taken care of first. So if this takes more than one work session, then that's just what's going to have to happen. Yeah,
no, that's the purpose of us doing those now, so we can get some basic work done. It'd be great. Okay. Moving on to old business that is supposed to begin at 2:05 p.m. and we're now at 2:06. Woot woot. Any old business?
Is our first budget committee meeting in February or is that March? I'm sorry, I didn't spend enough time on the director's report, so I know we have to do our appointments, but then is the actual first meeting in March? Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Phew. Good. Okay.
And that's not so much of a shoe because I'm only going to be here around in this area in the state like 4 days out of March. So just saying. Great. Old business. Also, I do wanted to, I guess that's the next thing. It'd be new business. So is any other old business from anyone? All right, moving on to item number 14, new business. Just wanted to make mention as a Springfield City Councilor, new council president, that Steve Dietrich came over to our council and during a work session and put on a presentation for all the counselors. We have 2 new counselors, so it was a real perfect timing. And he did a great job. It was all in English, which was pretty cool. And the slide presentation was easy to understand. And the cool part, the best part is that when you have counselors, especially new ones, that they had questions, but it wasn't, it was done so well that it kind of filled in it kind of filled in all the blanks they may have about LRAPA, why it's there, etc. So
Thanks,
anyway,
thanks for the compliment.
good job. So it was great. And yeah, nice. Oh, Janine. Mandarin like Joe Pish. No, it wasn't Mandarin like Joe Pish. So anyway, I guess, is there any other new business from anyone?
Chair Joe, I do have
Yep.
one thing to remind
Yes.
you
Yes.
that we've been doing this Zoom approach now for well over a year.
Oh.
Other meetings are taking place in person. Do we want to consider a couple of things? One is a hybrid approach, like we've already done for the past 3 or 4 months with the CAC. And do we want to still have it at LRAPA or think about other locations, depending on the venue we want to, with the size of the meeting we want to handle. The other thing is, if we do have it in hybrid and we want to have some people here at LRAPA or wherever our meeting place tends to be, and we need to talk about the lunch part of it, we will need to have head counts ahead of time if you want to go that route.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was on my burner here to discuss, and all those things were so more important. But this isn't unimportant. I totally agree with, I think, I personally, and all of the cities, at least Springfield, is moving back to in-person meetings wherever possible. And the exception would be attendance by Zoom. And that's being across the board being done now. In fact, all of our council meetings are in person, our work sessions are in person. So I would like to do that. I would attend LRAPA meetings as often as possible in person. And as far as the lunch is in the past, I think Debbie just took a head count as far as who's going to be there. And typically when the agenda or whenever the packets send out, she asks, okay, I need a head count, and then people would respond back to that very same email that had the packets attached.
Joe, can I jump in real quick? I think we need to be at least hybrid as well. I know the cities anyway are required to do that. I would assume LRAPA falls into that as well.
Yep. Public meetings, any public meetings, they now have to offer remote access. But we have the attorney has been looking at that as far as exactly which meetings those apply to. Some that doesn't apply necessarily to all meetings. But anyway, it looks like we're set up for hybrid. So LRAPA's already set up. But I think that there's actually a question as to regards to what has to be allowed. I know the court system, the municipal courts, for example, they just assume that it would be, they have to allow the remote access by defendants, and that's not the case. So I think we're moving away from that as well, making it mandatory that they show up in court. So
my office has moved to West Eugene, and Brian, being up in Oak Ridge, I don't want to sound whiny about this, but that would be about a half-hour drive for me back and forth. So I'm going to try to continue to use the hybrid option and Zoom in if that's okay. But I appreciate the value of getting together in person and for people to be able to see each other and talk. And I haven't been to LRAPA since before the pandemic. So it's not, as soon as there's an option to have, what's the pizza there? I can't remember.
Coburg Pizza.
Coburg Pizza, because it's been like 3 or 4 years. You let me know, because I'll make the drive. But my preference would be to be able to bounce back and forth between hybrid and in person. So it sounds like that's the direction we're leaning, and I support that for sure.
Right.
But the budget committee meetings are hard because you need a lot bigger space. So I guess my question would be like, let's think about it. Do we want to wait till after the budget season's over and then move into this? Because those are going to be really challenging, or, you know, so probably don't want to spend a bunch of time, but just something to be thinking about, because those, you know, we expand from our group of 9 or 10 to 20, right?
Right. And we've always
fit at LRAPA for those.
and we've always typically done the budget meetings at potential, I think, eWeb, we've had them at many different times. So those have always been in the larger rooms, and I would not oppose doing that with budget committee also.
Yeah, I don't think I can offer eWeb our headquarters building anymore. So
right.
And then out here, it's a secure facility. It's a lot harder for public meetings. We could try it, but then it's really not centrally located for anybody. So
right. Well, we have the library meeting room in Springfield, and I think we have a couple other locations that we've used. So I think we definitely should offer or conduct the budget / board meeting in person, and offer, of course, the hybrid. And I know, I get it, Janine. I'm in about as far east in Springfield as you can get, and getting from here to downtown Springfield is sometimes a challenge with traffic nowadays. But anyways, Mike, you okay with that too? Looks like then Howard. Yeah, and it looks like, you know, Debbie threw in a note that a lot of people are asking if it was Zoom was in their interest, and that's I don't see prohibiting them from using Zoom. We just need to get a head count and find a location for them, have a plan A, plan B.
Yeah, I think the point Debbie was making is sometimes that's the deciding factor if they want to be on the budget committee at all.
Right. And that's fine. You know, we're not going to, I don't see us, I'm not necessarily speaking for the whole group, but I don't see any reason to exclude someone because of them having to use Zoom as opposed to being a person. I would never be part of requiring someone to be there if it meant them being on the committee or not. So it sounded like a pretty good direction as far as the board's concerned. Awesome. So yes, maybe see you right there at LRAPA next meeting, Steve. Okay. So it is 2:15, you folks. What does your agenda say? Happens at 2:15. That is so awesome. You guys are awesome. All right.
Out of here.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so very much.
Thanks all.